All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. You can subscribe for free on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, and also listen in on rte.ie. We'll be previewing the 2024 League of Ireland season. We're still waiting for word on the next Boys in Green manager, but we do know the opposition for the Nations League later this year. To do all that, I'm joined by Treacy and Graham Gartland. And lads, welcome back to the podcast after our little mini pre-season and hiatus. But we'll just start on the next Republic of Ireland manager, of course, as we discussed with David Sneyd and Anthony Pine last week over about half an hour. The identity of this next manager has not been confirmed. We do know Lee Carsley is the favourite and the one that the FAI clearly are targeting, and Neil Lennon appears to be the backup. Now, we're not expecting an announcement this week. Apparently, Jonathan Hill had said it on Saturday at the Dublin Airport Clayton Hotel to delegates that an announcement is not imminent. But Keith, I suppose first on Lee Carsley, while he is the favourite at the moment, there is the sense that if he had said yes, this would have been done and dusted a long time ago, which just shows the amount of bargaining power he does have.
Yeah, I don't think it's a secret that the FAI want Lee Carsley. I think from what I'm hearing as well, I think the Irish public are leaning towards Lee Carsley. I think in an ideal world, a lot of people would roll the dice with Roy Keane, but I don't think that's financially viable. I don't think the FAI are in a place to make that happen unless Sky were willing to help us out and Keane himself. So, look, I still think Carsley will get it. I know there's been an awful lot of talk in the background. And look, I've spoke to ex-internationals, people from Lee Carsley's generation, and they're assuring me that he wants the job. He's a very proud Irishman, and he views himself as a very proud Irishman. So I still think he's going to get the job. I'm hearing they're bashing out the ins and outs of the contract right now. I know living in Ireland is a big thing for the FAI, but it's probably not something that Lee Carsley would be willing to do full time. So, look, I think he'll be given the job. I think he will get it. I think it's just, dotting the I's and crossing the T's at the minute, and Lee Carsley will get it. But as long as he's in place for the friendlies next month in March, I think we'll all be happy enough, because they've had an awful lot of time here, the FAI, to get this right. And I think Carsley is probably the right man to bring us to the next stage. But again, Raf, I'm not too worried about what manager's coming in. I'm more worried about what style of play they're going to have. Because again, I mean this as a well done to Stephen Kenny and Keith Andrews. I think they got all they could out of the Irish team playing the way they played, and the open, expansive type of football. I think we got everything we could out of that style. So I think Carsley will change tack, or whoever it is will have to change some sort of tack. I think England coming in September, it's a glamour toy, but if we open up and we have space between the lines, Bellingham, Foden, Grealish, these lads will absolutely annihilate you. So I think there's ways we can get stuff out of the bigger boys, but it's a pragmatic style, and it's not what people want to hear. But when the big boys come to town, we have to shut up shop. We have to be pragmatic. And look, by all means, when Gibraltar come to town, the so-called minnows of the world, then yeah, we can open up, we can play a 4-3-3, we can be a little bit more stylish. But when the big boys come, the likes of England, even the Greeks, and that might be a hard pill to swallow, but they're better than us. Technically they're better than us. They're further down the road than we are. Does that mean we can't win? Not at all. We just have to play a different brand of football, and I think we can get stuff out of it. It won't be great on the IRAF, but I'm hopeful we can get to the next level with Lee Carsley.
Yeah, and just before we touch on the Nations League draw, Graham, Neil Lennon as the fallback option, do you feel, and having played in Scotland, do you feel sometimes there is a little bit of snobbery towards Scottish football in a sense, because with all the trophies he's won as a manager at Celtic, sometimes there is a sense maybe that it's not as highly regarded, it seems, at least from whether it's media and some aspects of the fan base. But I don't know what you make of that.
Yeah, it can be. There's a weird sort of dynamic between the two leagues at times. Like Scotland would probably look down the nose on the League of Ireland, and the Premiership would look down its nose on Scotland, and that's the way it sort of goes in terms of the leagues. But in fairness to Lennon, like he won trophies at Celtic during the time when obviously he took over from Tony Mowbray. He hadn't won the league then; they were chasing it. He done really well in Scotland in his first tenure there. There's controversy follows him because of stuff that he does on the sideline, especially when he plays Rangers or he's involved in games against Rangers. But I don't think that'd be the case if he ever became Ireland manager. But he is very hands-on. I've seen him work I've coached against them. I've watched them on the sidelines when even reserve teams are playing, and he'll go and get involved and try and help out. So he's very hands-on in and how he wants things to be done and what he wants. Very motivationally based, pushes players, but he has a good understanding of the game as well. But going back to what Keith said, there's a little bit of it where you're like, Ireland have opened up and tried to play well. I do think you can be both. I've always said that from the start on this podcast. We've done it 2 years ago. I said, look, I think being open and expansive with the ball doesn't mean you have to be open when you're defending. I think you can do both. I think we should beat the smaller teams around us, but where I would see the jump and what if bringing in Lee Carsley is that we go and actually outplay the likes of a Greece and a Finland. I think that's the jump that we're looking for from a manager, is that, to go and compete against France, England and the bigger nations, it might be beyond us right now. But I think what we're looking for is, people who want to see Irish football do well, is that we go and match a Greece and match a Finland and go and actually be a dominant team. Our under-16s went and beat Greece 6-0 there a month ago. And you're saying, right, well, the talent pool is there, but how does that translate up to a first-team version when our first team take on Greece? So that's what you're looking for. And that would be of us evolving from what Stephen and his coaching staff has done. To evolve it is, we might have to be a bit more pragmatic against the bigger teams, but can we go and actually match up to the teams that are in and around us, the second and the third place players, our teams that allows us to get into playoffs or maybe even qualify as second place.
Yeah, and of course that draw, as you mentioned, the teams we will be facing in the Nations League in the second half of this year, which are of course England, Finland, and Greece. And Keith, I mean, obviously England is the one that's gaining all the attention because of the neighbours, rivalry, etc., all that comes with it, and all the history that surrounds it. But what was your initial reaction when you looked at that draw? Because I imagine Greece and Finland really is going to be the litmus test of where we need to be, rather than say England, who again it'll be hard to gauge where they're going to be, because by the time the fixtures happen, it's going to be after the European Championships, and perhaps they'll have a new manager, or there might be some sort of changes behind the scenes.
Yeah, they could even be coming to Dublin as European champions, Raf. They could go and win the Euros outright, which I wouldn't be too surprised with. In terms of the draw, I think it's probably, in football in terms, it's probably as bad as we could have got. I think the Finnish ones is probably the only one we're looking at thinking maybe we could beat the Finnish, but believe me, Ant-Man up front, Pico as well, is not a bad player. I think he scored 5 goals in European Championships qualifying last season. So although Pukki's 33, he still has a little bit about him, very quick, clever movement. So Finland won't be any mugs either. They'll be tough to play against. And the Greek one for me, I know what Graham is saying. Can we go to the next level? Can we outplay them? I don't think we have the players to. And I'm just really fearful that to be a possession-based team, you need somebody in the middle of the pitch who's very, very comfortable and who you can just give it to. Doesn't matter if there's 2-3 players around him, give it to him, lend it, you won't lose it. I don't really trust any of our midfielders to keep the ball. When we're on the deep in our own half and we're fizzing balls into Cullen, Malumbi, Brown, I'm nervous. I'm very, very nervous. And the one thing I always go back to is when we were in the game against the French and Pavard scores that goal, the Cullen Siders pass, I was thinking that's so avoidable. And I know we're trying to play out, but for me, if the French are coming to down, they're going to have to rip us open. They're going to have to do something brilliant to score a goal. We're not going to give the ball away on the edge of the 18-yard box. And look, I just think we've gone so far down this road with trying to play football. I think the English one, I think we'll stand up. I think we'll do all right, Raf. I think we'll get beat, but I think it'll be a defeat that we stomach. I think we'll dig in, we'll give a go, we'll get our backs against the wall, and we'll do okay. And against one of the best teams in the world, that's not a big deal. But the Finnish game, the Greek game, they're the two we need to turn up. That's our little league. The English will just go away from us in this group. So we need to concentrate on the Greeks. We need to concentrate on the Finnish game. And at home, we need to make the Aviva a fortress. We have to. We just have to make it like that. And I'm very, very hopeful moving forward that we can strike something up, because with Benny doing so well at Luton, Evan Ferguson seems to be a decent outlet. He's obviously knows how to hit the back of the net. Mikey Johnson's gone on loan to West Brom. If he can start getting a couple of games, we've 2 wingers there that can go and hurt people, and we've a striker who can finish. So if we can do what Ireland notoriously does, or has done over the years, defend, keep clean sheets, there's every chance we can nick games 1-0, 2-1, stuff like that. But in terms of playing open football, blowing teams away, getting 2 or 3 goals every game, I don't see that happening. I really don't. And look, we don't have to do that. That's if we don't have the pool of players to do that, then we have to go down a different avenue. And for me, the good thing is we have the bones of a team. We've 2 decent centre halves that can do a bit for us. We've Seamus Coleman that's still knocking about, still a good professional. We've 2 lads on the wing that have pace and a boy up front that can finish. So the bones of it is there. But a possession-based team that are going to strangle people and turn the screw and make it nice, I don't think we have it.
As well, aren't they, Keith, for the next 10 years? Like you've got 2 top-class goalkeepers as well that you're not worried about. You're not thinking, oh, that's going to be a problem. I think if you look at what you asked me about Scotland there, if you look what Steve Clarke done, and when Steve Clarke went in at Kilmarnock, he made them really pragmatic. They were excellent, but they were so hard to beat, and he didn't mind that. And he realised what he had. He went to Scotland, and he done the same for the first year. I remember there was a lot of people giving out about it's not great on the eye. And eventually you start building them up where their confidence went higher. And then they were able to play off the back of knowing, well, look, we're all right back here. So we can express ourselves a bit more further up the pitch because we're keeping clean sheets. And eventually the confidence, and then it became a really sort of energetic camp. The morale was high in the camp. The boys were looking forward to going to camp. And then they just start pulling out these results. And some of them are backs against the wall. They went to Spain and let Spain have the ball, but then like nick goals or beat Spain or Hamden on the counter-attack. And then they went and beat the teams around them. So again, a little bit of, for us to go to that next level, and I'm not saying we're there, I'm just saying for us to go to that next level, it is beating the likes of Greece and Finland and doing it whatever means necessary to do it, and then growing the confidence and building that up to take into qualifiers in the following year. And I think the earlier we can get Lee Carsley in and he can see which way he wants to do it, the better it will be for the FAI going forward.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on, Graham. I think if you look at the Scottish team against our Irish team, on paper, I would say the Scottish player for player are better than us. But they don't do that as individuals that you think, my God, like we couldn't do that. It's how they press as a team. It's how they go about it as a team. And they make a horrible Hamden is hopping. I think we should model ourselves on the Scottish, because I've heard Steve Clarke in interviews after the game say, well, we're Scotland and we're going to go about it how we go about it. They're not trying to do the model of Man City. They're not trying to be Spain. They're Scotland. And if we come to town, and I'm telling everybody who listens to me, look at the Arsenal second goal against Liverpool. A ball clipped in behind in that grey area. Alisson, the best goalkeeper in the world. Van Dijk, supposedly the best centre-half in the world. Martinelli just shows good attitude, runs after. And all of a sudden he has a tap in. If you put balls into grey areas and make defenders defend, make goalkeepers come off their line, you'll get things. And if teams are going to stand on the halfway line, centre-halves don't like running towards their own goal. So just chip it over and run after it. And you'll get stuff out of it. It's not a complicated game, but it's very, very complicated if a team is going to say, we're going to stand on the halfway line and press the lives out of you, and you're going to try and play through us. Then it can be very, very difficult, unless you have all the talent in the world. But if you don't, you have to play percentage football. You have to back teams off you. And when they do back off you, we get the ball out to Benny, and then we say, go and show me how good you are. But we have to be rigid. We have to be solid, and we have to keep clean sheets to be able to compete in groups.
Yeah, and we wait and see when the next manager is confirmed. Again, it's one of those.
They're announcing a new sponsor this week as well, though, right?
Yeah. So there could be a few things bundled together for sure. And of course, there's Mark Cannam's player pathway thing as well, which is of huge importance too. But before we touch on the League of Ireland, of course, this morning, the Ireland women's team confirmed Colin Healy and Emma Byrne will be remaining part of Aiding Gleeson's support staff. So they were part of the interim staff, but they're going to be carrying over now for the start of the Euro qualifiers and these upcoming friendlies later this month. And in terms of the League of Ireland and domestic football, the starting gun for the season was last Friday, with Shamrock Rovers beating St. Pat's 3-1 in the President's Cup final. Trevor Clark with a brace and Josh Honahan as well scoring the Rovers goals, and then Jamie Lennon with the consolation and a record 8,000 plus attendance for it as well. And the Premier Division kicks off this Friday, and we've got a live game on RT2 and the RTÉ Player, which is Shamrock Rovers against Dundalk. Coverage starts at 7:30 and kick off at 8 o'clock. And Before we touch on the clubs, the overall prize money for the league's 3 divisions, that's the men's Premier Division and First Division, and the women's Premier Division, has risen 17% from 655,000 to 765,000, and the Premier Division is going to see a 55,000 increase to 545,000. Now, Shamrock Rovers, as mentioned there, they won the President's Cup final and they won the league last season by 7 points, but it was the lowest points total they'd had in this 4 in a row, excluding the COVID season. They got 72 points last season. Now, they've lost captain Ronan Finn, who's gone to UCD. Alan Manus has retired, but they do have newcomers, Aaron McAneff and Dara Burns coming in on loan, and Johnny Kenny, Trevor Clark and Marcus Poon coming back for one more season. And Graham, on paper, when you look at them, are they, they're obviously looking to build from a position of strength, but do they look stronger on paper to you than the team that finished last season?
I'd say to be similar. Obviously, it'd be a big season for Poles and goal. I think Manus has been a mainstay for the 4 in a row, and he's been excellent. So, but look, the thing about Shamrock Rovers this season, they've signed loads of lads that either know the club and know the league. So they're not bringing anybody that's unknown that has to settle. Honohan comes in from Cork. He played in the Cork Premier Division last year. He's probably the best defender. Poom's obviously come back on loan, who had a good season last year. McAniff's come back, had a brilliant career here before he went to Hearts, and then obviously Burns, who done it at Pats before he went away, was one of their best attacking threats, and Kenny. So they're bringing in lads who know the league, and they can hit the ground running. They know what to expect when they go to these games. They're just strong. They're just strong all over. You saw that who wasn't involved the other night was the scary bit when you see that Bourne and Burke are sitting on the bench. But to me, I still think it boils down to Gaffney. I think he's probably the best player in the division. He's the difference at times in a lot of the games. He makes Rovers tick. He brings their players in, brings the midfielders into the game. He brings the wing backs into the game, and he just allows them to get up the pitch. And you can even see it with the third goal. As Pats put press on, he just leans into the right back, lets the ball go over him, and then Clark's away, and he goes to score. He goes and scores and kills the game. And he's their outlet when teams do decide to press. And I haven't seen many teams being able to handle him throughout the year. So I think they're as strong. I think they're favourites. I think they're going to take a lot of stopping. I think a lot of teams who are building are still probably a little bit off. Pats have built a lot. It's John Daly's first full season. He done incredibly well to win the cup last year. I think some of his signings have been excellent as well. The likes of Keeley, again, players who know the league. Bulger coming in from Cork, I think he's a great sign. I think it was a bit unfair maybe him playing right back the other night. Brandon Kavanagh, again, another excellent young player coming down. Keating. So they've signed players that know the league as well. And I probably think the main challenge will come for them. I felt for the goalkeeper the other day. I think he will be a good addition to them. It's going to take a while for him to settle as well and get used to the league. Odumosa played in 2022 in the President's Cup and made a mistake as well, and he went on to have a good career at Pats before they sold him and moved him on. So I wouldn't be so quick to judge him. He obviously knows he can do better, but he has a lot of pedigree as well. But yeah, I do think it's Rovers League again, and I'm not just saying they're off the back of. I just think everything's in place for them to be successful, and other clubs are still trying to catch up to that.
Yeah, and as you said, it's Pats who could pose the stiffest challenge. And Keith, when you look at Pats' squad from finishing third last season, winning the FAI Cup, and then what was interesting, they got a lot of in terms of the business into the club, they got it done very early, which always looks like a good sign, and I guess helped, as Graham said, by the fact that there is stability there with John Daly in a way that wasn't there 2 years ago when Stephen O'Donnell leads them to a cup, but then very quickly goes to Dundalk.
Yeah, look, Pats have signed some good players. I think Brandon Kavanagh is a very, very exciting. Keane Kavanagh is exciting. And I was at the awards dinner at the end of last season, and Rory Keaton was sitting on the Pats table. That's how quickly that was done. So I'm sure he feels comfortable already in there. But I think there's a lot of question marks. I think the 6 or 7 players gone out of the building at St. Pat's, and that's a huge turnover. I know that's quite normal in the League of Ireland, but you can't just take 6 players out of the starting lineup, throw another 6 in and think, well, we hit the ground running on paper, they're good players. It doesn't work like that. So Pats will have to work out a couple of little kinks here and there, how people play. You know, Chris Forrester will have to get used to the likes of runs that Kavanagh likes to make. So there'll be little things. Like the keeper, like Graham says, I did feel from him. I thought he could have done better for 2 out of the 3 goals. I thought the first one, his positioning was wrong, and the second one, his handling wasn't great. He should have saved it. So he's just got his first taste really of the league. So you'd expect him to get a lot better. But just some question marks. I think Mark Doyle will be a big, big miss. Him coming in from the left wing, the way he used to attack the crosser coming in from the right side was brilliant. So there's a lot of young players. Tom Lonergan's gone out as well. Now, I know Pats have filled these players. They filled the holes, but there's question marks. How are they going to get on? How are they going to get, Kavanagh coming down from Derry back into Dublin? It's not always as easy as just playing football and getting on with it. There's a human side that has to adapt as well. So there's question marks over there. I think Pats will be the best of the rest. I'm very reluctant to go against Shamrock Rovers. I think for their high standards last season, they were fairly poor, especially in and around Europe. They were poor, but nobody else could grab the league by the scruff of the neck and go and take it on.
Such a poor start, wasn't it, Keith? But like the door was open, nobody came through it. Like the door was open from the poor start that Rovers had, and nobody was able to just go through it. I'd agree. I think Sam Curtis is probably going to be a big miss for Pats, because it doesn't look like it's probably the one position they haven't filled. Keith might know more than I would on it, but there's not really a right back jumping out at me in that group that they brought in. I know they brought in Turner, which allows them to maybe play 3 at the back and play left-sided centre-back. I don't see a right back in there, and Bulger had to play there the other night. Is that something that they'd look at going forward?
Yeah, no, that's a big one, because so much of what Pats do is Jake Mulroney, and Jake Mulroney's a really good player, will give you so much down the right. Doesn't really want to come back too much, so you need a good right back who can defend in one-on-one situations. Curtis was ideal for that because he was so quick, so energetic. He could do a bit of both. He'd get up and down and he'd do his defensive stuff. So look, it is a tough one, but I'm sure John Daly, the boys in and around Pats will be identifying, had a look and thinking, is there anybody we can nick and just a solid right back, just somebody we don't really need too much going offensively, but defensively we need to shut up shop, because like I say, Mulroney will go missing at times and he will win you games, but you'll be left 1v1. And Sam Curtis he was such a brilliant utility player, because he would play right back. Rogowski got injured, Redmond got injured, just slotted in centre half. And to be 16, 17 in a man's league, to be doing that, to be physically not messed about, was brilliant from him. And I'm delighted he got his move to Sheffield United. I would have loved to see him hang on for another year and maybe go over trying to get into the first team at Sheffield United. But look, he's in and around Premier League players. He's learning off Chris Wilde, Keith Andrews, people who've been there and done it. And hopefully he can get some minutes under his belt and pressing. Hopefully we'll see him in the Premier League. I don't think it'll be next season, because they'll be back down in the Championship. But hopefully Sam can hit the ground running over there.
Yeah, and then Derry City finished second last season, but they got 1 fewer point last season than they did in 2022. So it feels like there was a level of stagnation there, Graham. But a lot of the focus has been on the forward line and getting like basically a fox in the box. And Patrick Hooban is somebody Rory Higgins was looking at getting. He's got him now. Do you feel that that gives them an extra dimension?
I think it'll help them in the games where they're probably dominant in their possession stats, and then they have a lot of sort of pressure in the opposition half, and then balls into the box and balls across the box. I think it'll nick them goals where they probably weren't getting that off McGonigal. I think in the big games against Rovers, Hooban has a good record in terms of he scored a couple of headed goals last year against Rovers, but when they're high up the pitch, he's probably not going to hurt you behind. So I think the likes of Duffy and Kelly would be big ones that are going to have to stretch the game in the bigger games. Again, going toe-to-toe with Rovers. They beat Rovers last year at home. They probably should have beat them in the game when they were winning 1-0 with 5 minutes to go and Burke gets a penalty. But in the other games, and I think going back to Pats as well, Pats didn't take any points off Rovers last year. I think they drew 2-2 in Tallaght Stadium. Mulroney scored with a last-minute goal. That was the only point they took off them. So out of possible 12 points, they've taken 1. And if you're going to really take a champ, win the league, you've got to take points off your closer rivals. I think Derry can do that at times. But it's the games, I'll give you an example. Rovers, after that Derry game, Rovers went to UCD and drew 0-0, and Derry then go to Sligo, and you're thinking if they beat Sligo, they could be back in it, and they lose 1-0, and Sligo were really struggling at the time, and it's that ruthlessness, it's that streak of going, where no matter what happens, we're coming out with a victory in this game, and I hope they're hoping that Houben does that for them, but they do need to get that something about them that win when they're expected to win. That's a hard thing to have. You're now classed as second favourites to win the league or third favourites. You have to go and win and take points off teams that you're expected to beat. And the other games will take care of themselves. The Rovers Derry games will take care of themselves. But I do feel that it's something that the other teams need to get. Rovers tend to get it. They go and win when they're expected to win, and they just shurp shop out you get. And I think the other teams need to get that if they are going to wrestle the title away from Rovers. But look, Shells will be strong as well. Shells will be difficult to beat. They brought in Williams to help them. Liam Burke comes in on. They've lost the top goal scorer in the league, which is going to be massive in terms of the goal output. Boyd will be big for them. But they look like they've just sort of solidified a little bit with all the turmoil with going into the off season with Damien maybe leaving. It looks like they've just sort of settled on it. Dundalk, Sligo. I don't know what to expect out of them, because I don't know some of the players that they brought in. It's like they just, like Keith said, they bring in this big overhaul of players, then it's very hard for them to hit the ground running. I do think the lad they brought in, Jamie Golan, 3 or 4 years ago, I watched him play for Hibs, and he was excellent, and he was in around Hibs' first team. Went on loan to he ended up signing for Rovers. He was one that Hibs had really high hopes for. They thought he was going to be the next one to come through their academy system and really cement the place. If he can get back fired into what he was 3 or 4 years ago, they've a really good player in their hands. But it depends how he settles and what's left in him. But he was one that excited me. My ears pricked when I said to a few lads, he's a good player, this boy. But it depends how he is and what sort of physical state he's in now coming over here. But it's hard to see anything else from the other teams because they're a little bit unknown in terms of the players they're bringing in.
Yeah, and just on Shells, Keith, as well, just I suppose to add to it, in terms of the players, the losing the goals, Jack Moylan, the leadership of Luke Byrne as well, which I think can't be underestimated. They were building off a really good base last season. Defensively, joint second best defensive record, only conceded 27. But the area they needed a bit of work on was the goals up front. So they got 44 overall in the season, and only the two relegated clubs, Cork and UCD and Drogheda, scored fewer than that. So that's clearly the area if they're going to push on after a very good fourth place finish.
Yeah, but Damien Duff will say you only need to score 1 goal a game to win it if you can keep a clean sheet. And if Shelbourne are going to be defensively as strong as they were last season, they only need to improve a couple of percent in terms of scoring goals. And I think the way Shelbourne play, I think again they're getting exactly what they need out of the team with the 3 centre halves, the 2 wing backs, recovery runs or sprints. It's so hard to play against them, and when they do lose the ball, so much you hear now football transition. When Shelbourne lose the ball, you very, very little time to go and hurt them, because, like I say, every sprint, every recovery run is a sprint. The two wing backs come back really, really quickly, and they can go and hurt you. They don't care about having possession. They don't care about how the flow of the game is going. They have every chance to hurt you. And I think Damien Duff, I think he's a brilliant man manager. I'm hearing a lot of stuff about them doing army training and stuff for pre-season, so I'm sure they'll be well drilled, just like they were all last season. And yeah, Damien Duff just seems like one of these guys that every now and then you get a manager that you just click with, and you think, oh, he loves the club, he loves the players, he wants us to flourish, wants us to do well. And Duffer just seems to ooze that. And when you have a lad who's done so much in his career, and he's willing to give you so much out of his managerial career as well, he's putting so much into the League of Ireland, you can't help but want to run through brick walls from him. And yeah, I think Shelbourne will be fine. I think they might even, mid-table, maybe top half, fighting for Europe in around there. I think they'll be absolutely fine in terms of relegation, because I think that's the big question. I think Galway will put up a real good fight. I don't think Galway will go back down. So last season, I think everybody knew UCD are the ones going down, who's fighting for the playoff. I think this season it's all up in the air. Anybody could be last, anybody could be in the playoff. But I like Galway. I think Galway, I've seen them in the FAI Cup semi-final against Bows. and I thought they were really good, really solid, very pragmatic in what they do. But it's horses for courses, and they were very competitive in that Bows game, and that was when Bows obviously had Afolabi, really good team. So I think Galway will be mid-table. I don't think they'll go down, which is, all you can ask for from a team coming up.
Yeah, and Graham, as you said, a number of clubs in that sort of mid-table have gone for or look to bring in players from outside of sort of the League of Ireland system, and Dundalk and Bows, as you mentioned already, they're going to be, as you said, hard to judge. And partially, when it comes to Dundalk as well, they've a number of key performers from recent seasons: Greg Sloggett, Patrick Hoban, as we mentioned already, Daniel Kelly, Dara Leahy. They've all gone, and a few newcomers there. Obviously, still have Horgan and a Benson for a bit of experience. Archie Davis is still there. And Bows, obviously, they lose Jonathan Afolabi, but they've gone and they've signed a number of Estonian internationals. And again, be very hard to judge. We'll have to wait and see as the season goes on to see how they settle in. But then Dale Rooney is a good addition from Drogheda for them as well.
Yeah, that's probably the one that you said. He's been a performer in the league for the last 2 years, and he's gone to Bows, and hopefully he kicks on, similar to what the midfielder done, James Clark, when he left, he kicked on and done really well. Afolabi going is massive because, again, similar to Moylan, scored the majority of the goals. I'm looking at the sheet of the players that the clubs have signed, and that's just short. I think they've 5 defenders on their books. I know Flores can drop back in. Buckley goes back in and plays right back at times. They've had to do that with a few of them and makeshift, but like Cornwall coming back is a big addition for them because he's played there before. He understands the league, and he knows Bows well. The goalkeeper situation, I think they signed a goalkeeper in the last week as well, with Talbot being on leave. Dundalk's goalkeeper situation, Shepherd didn't sign back. I think they've only one goalkeeper on the books at the moment, is Monroe. So yeah, Bows and Dundalk are a little bit unknown because the players are a little bit unknown. So it's hard for us to then come in and go, well, let's judge them. And I've always said, and we've always said this, having played in the league, the 4 series of games, after the 4 series of games, you can go, right, let's see where teams are at, and let's see where players are at. We've seen it last year with certain players where you go, right, Hume, for example, at Rovers, quiet start and then grew into, and you thought, right, there might be something there that he can handle the league. Other players are coming in. I think Afolabi took a while to score, and then once he started scoring, he got momentum and kicked on, and you're like, right, well, there's a player there as well. So it does take them a little while to get used to it. And I think after the series of 10 games, then you can judge. I think Padraig Amond coming back from Waterford's a big signing, considering they lost Colgan. That was a big loss to them. I'll be interested to see how their midfielder does. Romeo, who done really well in the playoff and scored a couple of goals, he'd be the one to watch for them in terms of coming from midfield. Sligo again, they promoted Elding, the young lad who's the son of Anthony Elding, who would have played at the club as well. Fitzgerald's a big player for them, but I don't really see much else, that's coming. A lot of them are unknown. I think the top half will be Rovers, Derry, Pats, Shells, and I think it's whoever can kick on from there, they get into it. Drogheda have gone about their business really well. I think Perro is a really good signing for them. I know we had a lot of interest in it. I think he'll be the one that will get them goals. I think Keely's a big loss for them as centre back because he was very dominant in the box. But they've done really well to bring in the players they have. And obviously with the investment they have that's slowly coming in, they're trying to improve the training ground, they're trying to improve all these things around it before they maybe go full-time in 2025.
Yeah, but as you said there, also on top of it, probably Kevin Doherty being the biggest signing of all in terms of keeping him at the club. Obviously last season Cork City showed a bit of interest, but it's really been Kevin and his staff's work there that have really kept them, and especially it's going to be bigger this season. I think, as Keith has already said, Galway look like they'll be strong. Waterford could be dangerous as well, and it's not the same situation as last season where UCD were well below the rest of the pack, and Cork as well seem to be struggling.
I think going to see the difference with UCD was you're going to UCD and the majority of the crowd are your home fans. I think when you go away to Galway and Waterford, it's going to be a different kettle of fish now. They're going to be a lot tougher games going down there. They're going to, like, any team going in Galway have waited so long to be back in the Premier Division. The fans are going to be right behind them. Waterford the same. The fans are going to be right behind them and make it as difficult and as awkward for the teams going down there as they possibly can. And I know, look, famous Roy Keane quote, the fans don't play. I get that. But going to UCD and there's 1,000 people at the game and they're all supporting you. It's different to going to a Galway and a Waterford. So that's where I think it becomes a bit more of a competitive league. Waterford and Galway are both full-time as well, from what I know. So again, majority of the teams bar Drogheda are nearly full-time in the league, which is where we want to get to. But it makes for a more competitive league.
Yeah, and Keith, when you're looking at those four clubs, so Drogheda, Sligo Rovers, Galway United, and Waterford, so the latter two having just come up, which one would you be most worried about, especially when it comes to that automatic relegation place?
Well, straight away, the one that jump in is Drogheda, just because they're not full time. You'd imagine that Waterford will have enough. Galway, I think we'll have enough to avoid both relegation spots. So yeah, it really is all up in the air. But I think Drogheda will be looking over their shoulders, thinking we must be favourites for this. But on paper, you would imagine that they will have enough to keep away from it. But as Graham says, going to Galway these days is going to be very, very different. Rather than a UCD where you get on top in the game, there's not much fighting. It's sort of accepted. Go to Galway, you go 1-0 up. It's not going to be accepted. The fans are going to get behind them. They're going to be running. You know what John Caulfield, Ollie Horgan are like. They're not going to sit down and take any beatings either. So that'll be a really tough place to go to. But we might get a better gauge. I think it's Galway and Pats in the first game. So that'll be a difficult opener for Pats in the league. And we'll start to get a gauge over the first couple of games, just how lads are adapting to this league. But it's really all up in the air. But I would be nervous for Drogheda from the outset, yeah.
Yeah, and what about Sligo as well? Because they were a little bit, they had their issues last season. They had enough to stay up, but looking at their signings, Ed McGinty has come back in goal, and then you've Conor Malley, J.R. Wilson, Simon Power, Wilson Waweru. They're among the arrivals. Is it enough though to stave off the two clubs that have come up, and then also Drogheda, who seem to always, well, under Kevin Doherty at least, always seem to have enough to stay above water?
Yeah, well, look, I don't think it's all about, having class and goal scorers and people to keep your head above water. I think it can be a collective effort. It can be know-how. It can be dark arts. It can be just getting over the line in games. And Sligo have been in the league for a good while now. I spoke to John Russell an awful lot when he was at Pats playing with Sligo. We're playing Pats. I'd be picking his brains. And he was always quite comfortable with the situation. I think he knew from the outset this is going to be a tough season for us. And the fact that the board are sticking with him, I think they realise it's going to be a tough one for them again. And again, Sligo will be looking, but it's all about getting off to a good start. If Sligo can win a couple of games in the first round, I think that will ease their fears. And they have enough. I think they do have enough there. I don't think they have any one outstanding talent that you think he's the one, he's the Max Matter, he's the one who's going to score the goals. I don't think they have that player, but there's nothing to say that the collective can't get them over the line. Couple of midfielders scoring goals, defending well. And I don't think anybody likes going to Sligo. It's always a nice pitch up in Sligo. It's always a nice enough crowd. But, if you're coming from Dublin up to Sligo on a Friday afternoon, your legs can be a bit heavy. It can be tough to go, and sometimes Sligo can take advantage of that. So I think they'll have enough. I'm really not sure who's going to get it, Raf. I think if you were to give me some money and send me to the bookies, I would be going for Drogheda. But I think Sligo will be there or thereabouts as well, yeah.
Sligo started the season really well. Like I watched Sligo play Rovers in Tallaght, and they were excellent. And even like the management staff of Shamrock Rovers came out and said it was one of the best performances they've come up against that season. But they had no cutting edge at the top end. I'm not sure if Matt was playing that day, but they were really, really good. And we done a game up in Derry for RTÉ where they were excellent as well. And I thought Sligo were a really good team. But then they just fell off a cliff. I know they lost a goalkeeper. They brought back Mann, the centre back from St Johnstone, and they were expecting big things to him. Everything he done just went wrong for him. In fairness, he was sent off. He was like scoring on goals. There was loads of things that just kept going wrong for him. And my worry with Sligo is when it starts going wrong, it's like they just fall off, like a Keith uses, they fall off a cliff. It's like they're doing really well, and then all of a sudden a game turns and it's like, here we go again. And they look defeated then, and there's no sort of fighting them. I think Drogheda will always bounce back. I think United Park, I played there. It's one of the smallest grounds in the league, as they say. The games are always competitive there. I don't think Drogheda be in trouble. I'm not saying that with me Drogheda hat on, but I just, like you said, I think they have a lot of experience in their team as well. They brought Webster in as well, that give them that bit of experience at the back. But it's hard. I just think when things get tough for Sligo, they sort of roll a bit, and I don't think Drogheda have that. I think they keep going. I think they always tend to bounce back. I think Waterford a little bit unknown as well. You're not sure what they get. They got Radkowski off of Bohemians. But yeah, I don't know. I think Sligo would be my worry to be in and around the bottom. The bottom. That would be my worry. Like, I just think
lost a lot of leaders as well, haven't he? Like,
yeah.
I'm looking at the names that have gone out. Gary Buckley going to Galway. He was a real leader for them. Daniel Lafferty, although he wasn't always on the pitch, he was somebody who had experience in England. He was a decent age. He could speak to people. Greg Bolger and David Cawley, the two centre midfielders, they were real leaders. You don't have to be winning the league to be a leader, but just getting people over the line. That David Cawley and Greg Bolger could hold them. And again, it's not because of minutes on the pitch. It's just how to talk to people, how to get the younger lads. When things do go badly, how you react, and losing players like that could hurt them. So again, Raf, it's all up in the air. It could be anybody. It could be one of about 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah, we're following it as obviously as the season goes on, and Sligo start their season at Bowes on Friday. Drogheda are away at Derry City. Waterford are hosting Shelbourne. Galway, as you mentioned earlier, are hosting St. Pat's, and the TV game on RT2 and RTÉ Player, it's Shamrock Rovers against Dundalk, and coverage, as said, starts at 7:30. Now, the First Division is also kicking off, and Cork City here would look like the big fish as the only full-time setup, and they've Tim Clancy with his experience of bringing a club up from the First Division in charge now. And Graham, when you look at them, from looking at the feedback of some of their supporters, you would have some slight worries and concerns about them. But do you think they have enough to, push for that automatic spot?
Yeah, I probably do. I think like Keith touched on, I think they signed Greg Bolger as well, which would be a big signing for them. You'd imagine with the full-time setup that they have, Hounahan would be a big loss for them. He was one of the better defenders. Keating will be a big loss for them because of the goals. Aaron Bolger was probably the best midfielder. In terms of consistent performing, it's hard to look past Keating for them, but Bolger was really driving them in a lot of the games I've seen them play. Really sort of influential player for them. Just his drive, constantly running in midfield. So Bolger's different. Greg Bolger's different to Aaron Bolger in that he'll sit and get them playing, but you'd imagine that they'd have too much. It'd be interesting to see how UCD fared out as well with them going down. They have a lot of young players that will come through, and the freedom of playing in the First Division where they're winning, that their confidence goes up. And I think sometimes that helps with the young players. They're not getting beaten every week. They're going to win the majority of the games, you'd imagine, and then their confidence will go high. So they could go on a run. What else around that loan, Longford? There's not much else around that. You're like Treaty have had a good run in the cups a couple of years. They're always difficult to beat. So yeah, it's hard to look past Cork because of the full-time element and some of the players that they brought into.
Yeah, and looking at those clubs that could be pushing, and some cases, the ones I'm going to mention did get into the playoffs last season, Keith. So UCD, of course, have dropped down. Will O'Connor is now the head coach, but they do have the experience of Ronan Finn in there now. After his move across from Shamrock Rovers, Cove Ramblers did very well last season, but Shane Keegan is gone. Gary Hunt is in, and also I think they're due to be playing some of their early home games at Turner's Cross while they're getting their pitch relayed on their own home ground. And then you've Athlone, who did very well last season, but Piero isn't there anymore. And then you've a very young Wexford team who did really well last season and possibly could be the ones to push on again.
Yeah, again, it's fairly similar to the Premier League in the fact that, a lot of teams in the mid to lower levels have been absolutely gutted, and they brought other players in to fill the boots of the players that's left. And we're just waiting to see how they hit the ground running, if they do or if they don't. And look, I think Ronan Finn's a brilliant signing by UCD. The fact that he still wants to keep going at, given what he's done in the league, prepared to drop down a level and show people his experience and pass on his knowledge. I think UCD will be there or thereabouts, but very, very hard to look past Cork in the First Division. It's just the way they play. I know Keaton will be a big miss for them, but Honohan as well, Joe O'Brien, Whitmarsh going across to Southampton. There's a couple of misses there, but you would imagine that they will just do enough. And UCD, I think they're more or less a yo-yo club these days, aren't they, bouncing up and down? But yeah, I think Cork and UCD will be the early favourites there. But again, there's so much of it. So many players get turned over in all the clubs. You're thinking it could be any, it really could be anybody. But Cork and UCD would definitely be the early favourites.
Yeah, and
it's a hard league, isn't it? Because they're all on 1 year deals, and then they move on. And if a player does well, he moves. They bring in a lot. Like, I think Wexford have made a great signing. King Curtis going in he was Player of the Year in the under-19s for Rovers last year. Signed him when he was 10. He was a great kid out of Killamana, and he scored a lot of goals in the 19s league last year. So the natural progression is that he goes there. Bray have signed a couple of lads as well, and as like Keith will tell you, they get to 19s league and they need to start playing, and they go and play in the first division, but it's a tough league as well. A lot of travelling, like you said, up and down the Cove, Cork, Longford at Loan, Wexford. There's a lot of travelling in the league, so you have to be willing to and be ready to play and be prepared to play. And like you said, it's a great breeding ground for the young players that when they're coming out of the 19s league or the 20s leagues to go in and get first team experience and go to the likes of Turner's Cross and experience it and perform. So yeah, it'd be an interesting first division, all right.
Yeah, and what do you think of Longford Town, and I suppose Finn Harps as well, who had a really, a real season to forget last year, and obviously they'll be looking to bounce back and put themselves in contention. Like a lot of these clubs, I mean, the likes of Longford Town, Bray Wanderers as well under Ian Ryan, Finn Harps would probably have high ambitions as clubs and see themselves as being capable of playing at a higher level. But what do you make of those three, I suppose, in particular?
Ian Ryan was really, like, Bowes were looking at Ian Ryan a few years ago, and he never took the job with Bowes, and then Bray sort of stealing from under Wexford's nose, and it's a bit of a coup, and then you're hoping that they kick on. But if the infrastructure's not there for you to kick on, a really good young manager, but obviously he needs the players, and the Bray will be expecting bigger things because they're a little bit more settled. Finn Harps obviously Dave Rogers went in last year. He had a little bit of a change in that Ollie Horgan used to bring in a lot of outside players, got them promoted, really competitive, but the players would move on year after year. They'd have to redo it, and eventually you couldn't replace the quality that was leaving. You lost a lot of players one year to Bowes and Drogheda, and they end up getting relegated. And I think they've had a little change of tact. I think Kevin McHugh has a bit more of a say, and they're bringing in a lot of their younger players out of the academy, and they've put a lot of work into that. So they're hoping that bears fruit, that the young players are able to perform. And again, Finn Harps, it's a tough place to go, but again, they need to perform when they're up there. And like you said, it's a great breeding ground for these young players to really feel what it's like to go and be prepared to play. Some of them might be in college, but they have to make sure that they're getting off on a Friday to go travel and play with Finn Harps, and that's the joys of it if you're trying to sort of make a career for yourself in the league. But yeah, I think Wexford will be okay. They've gone for a lot of young players as well. Longford again, Stephen Henderson in there, done a good job to sort of just keep them going, and he's hoping that they kick on again this season. But there's no easy jobs in that division because it's hard. They're all part-time and the infrastructure isn't there for them to really kick on, and there's no real budgets for them to attract the really top players to go down. So they're working as best they can.
Yeah, and then the one that did catch the eye was Kerry FC, Keith, and that's this is their second season in the division, second season in existence. But their new head coach, Conor McCarthy, is only 25 years old. So there's a lot of focus on that side of things. But maybe that's the best club to be if you're going to be a young manager at that age, with a club where there isn't that pressure really to push on straight away, and it's all about a long-term building process. That's probably the best place for him to be.
Yeah, I think Kerry at the minute is quite a unique place because I think there's a lot of leeway given for mistakes. As you said, Raf, only the second full season in existence. What can you really be expecting to be up the top of the league, looking for promotion? I think that's unrealistic. I think there's going to be building blocks put in place at Kerry over the next couple of years. There is young managers there. They'll be trying new ideas, these modern managers, seeing what they can get. But yeah, it's all about building blocks, like you say. Only the second season in existence. There's going to be times where they take a wallop, and there's going to be times where they're competitive. But all in all, they're still moving forward, like you say. So, yeah, if Kerry can, win a couple of games this season, not get embarrassed and everything, then I think it really is as realistic as that for them. I was with Billy Dennehy. I played with Billy at Pats, and he was down there last season. And it's very, very difficult, when you're a young lad trying to get your point across and you're up against it, and to get people to come down to play in Kerry, really, really difficult. But if they can somehow keep their head above water this season, I think that's all the aim.
Yeah, and before we go,
it's difficult for the clubs in terms of trying to run their budget when you see like 2 trips to Cork, 1 Dublin team, a Wexford team, up in Donegal, Cove, Bray, Longford, Wexford. There's a lot of travelling in that league. So I do feel for the clubs in terms of the budget for buses and all that to try and make that viable and then still be competitive on the pitch. I don't think people realise how tough it is for these clubs to try and give that town a team to be proud of as well.
Yeah.
The financial cost, just if you're going to Kerry or you're going up to Donegal, it's not just the fact that we get a bus from Dublin to Donegal, we play the game, we come back. You have to stop at a hotel, you have to get lunch, you have to refuel. There's so many financial issues that go there. And when you across the water in England, you go down on a Friday, you stay in a hotel, you get a couple of meals, you rest, and then you play. Here, you meet at 12 o'clock, you drive down 3 or 4 hours, you stop at a hotel, you put a bit of grub in your belly, and you're straight onto the pitch. It's really, really difficult. So it wouldn't surprise me if a Finn Harps, somebody that was a little bit further away in the country, just take the mantle up and do really, really well at home, because people don't have the legs when they get there to put it up against them.
Yeah, and Manchester City, who are in Champions League action live on RT2 and the RTÉ Player, going to Denmark to face FC Copenhagen. I presume they're not taking the scenic route and going by bus all the way down the Channel Tunnel and then all the way across to Denmark. I think there'll be a fairly plush flight involved there. So this is the return of the Champions League with the knockout stages, and the other game on Tuesday night is RB Leipzig against Real Madrid, and then Wednesday Lazio against Bayern Munich and PSG against Real Sociedad. And Graham, looking at Man City, and look, there's still a realistic chance that they could go on and get the treble, but it just feels like things are clicking for them now. Kevin De Bruyne has come back, Erling Haaland scores a couple of goals at the weekend, and what we've seen for the last few seasons, where they just at this point of the season steamroll everything in front of them, it's starting to happen again.
Yeah, I probably think they needed that little bit of a lift that De Bruyne gave them as well, and you can see the reaction when he comes on against Newcastle and scores. Højlund at the weekend, for all the chances he had, he just looked so powerful. His first goal was great, but his second goal probably was what really made him stand out in Europe when he went to Dortmund, was that power, that 1v1. He put it down the side, the defender's there, but he just shrugs them off and scores. And a lot of his goals at Dortmund would have been like that. He probably doesn't get as many of them type of goals as City, because a lot of teams are sitting back and there's not a lot of space for him to do it. But because obviously they were on the counter-attack and there was space, he has a 1v1 with the defender, just brushes him off and scores. But yeah, I think, look, it looks ominous, and a fair play to Arsenal and Liverpool for going at them again, because City are just a machine. They're just relentless, and in fairness to Guardiola, for him to constantly push his teams to challenge, no matter, for the last, it feels like 15 years of Guardiola now, where every year these teams are always pushing to either win the league or win the Champions League. And I can't see them having any trouble with Copenhagen. And I think, looking at the group, I probably think they'd be favourites to win the Champions League again. It's very hard to see past them.
Yeah, and Keith, I mean, I know you always keep more of an eye on Arsenal, but is the belief still there? Of course, yesterday, I was watching that match against West Ham, and I mean, West Ham wilted to an extent, so that probably helped as well. But the Arsenal just seem a bit rejuvenated from that break they had across during January, when they went away for a bit of warm weather training.
Yeah, we do. We seem a little bit refreshed. I think the performance of Jorginho against Liverpool was outstanding, but he can't play every single game. He's very one-paced. He can be caught out if you can beat him in a tackle. His powers of recovery are non-existent. There's an awful lot not to like about Jorginho, but when he plays like he did against Liverpool, the little angles, when the Liverpool press is coming on, 1-2 touch, never giving them a chance to shape the press. And it looks so simplistic, but when the press is coming on and it's difficult and it has to be 100%, he just did it and he made it look effortless. He was absolutely outstanding. Do I think Arsenal will win the league? No. It's just because Man City are so good. I was watching the game against Everton, and I thought for 60, 65 minutes, I thought, gee, maybe Everton can get a draw here, get a little bit of something. And then all of a sudden, Haaland just went bang, bang, have that. And you're thinking, my God, and De Bruyne is coming on. To come back, to be out as long as De Bruyne has been, come back for that Newcastle game and just look like he's never been away. That's the sign of an absolutely class player. You know, players will use the word world-class, brilliant player, but to be out for that long and come back and just look like you're riding a bike, you've done it all your life, that's the sign of a real world-class player. Haaland, for me, looked a little bit undercooked, but then went on and scored 2 goals. And there was a moment in the Everton game where I think it was a cross to the back stick, and he got under it and headed it over. And one of the centre-halves for Everton just had a little word in his ear, and he just smiled. And like he knew, I'm going to score. Don't worry about it. I am going to score. With Højlund, you don't quite have that feeling. But with Haaland, it's just an air of inevitability. It's going to happen. And they just have so much class coming off the bench. It's ridiculous. It really is. It's so hard. And I'm delighted for Arsenal that they did it, because the celebrations against Liverpool were under the media spotlight. Oh, they've overdone it. And I thought the media are waiting in the wings here for Arsenal to get beat by West Ham so they can jump on them. Thankfully, Arsenal managed to go and do it. But you know, I'm hearing stuff out of West Ham. David Moyes needs to go. His time is up. Let's not be too hasty here, though. I think they're 8th in the Premier League now. They won a European trophy last year, the first time they've won a trophy in 30 years. And to be 8th in the Premier League is not easy these days with how tough it is, how much talent is in the top of the Premier League. To be 8th is absolutely fine, believe me. And yeah, I don't know what the West Ham fans want. I know 6-0 Arsenal, that's not good enough. They did throw the towel into to somewhat degree, but by and large, if you zoom out from that, David Moyes teams don't do that. That's very rare that stuff would happen. So I expect West Ham to bounce back. I think they miss a lot with Antonio not being in the team. Bowen is having to play through the middle. Bowen I love him to death. 11 goals this season, but you want him on the wing. You want to be pumping balls up to Antonio, and you want that Bowen to be getting involved. Paquetá is an obvious big miss of them as well, but defensively, they were really, really poor. And when you think of David Moyes' teams, you think bodies on the line, you know, blood coming out of the nose, blood, sweat, thunder. They didn't do that. It was there, and they sort of shied away from it. And I'm sure the West Ham fans, most of them left at half time. I understand that as an isolated incident, but in terms of getting rid of David Moyes, I don't think the grass will be greener on the other side. I think given the players he has, to be 8th in the Premier League, playing the way he's playing, I think he's doing better than he should be.
Yeah, and it's a former West Ham striker as well who scored the winning goal in the Africa Cup of Nations final, with Ivory Coast, the host nation, beating Nigeria 2-1. Sebastian Haller, who I'm referring to there, and great story for him as well, because he'd had testicular cancer only a couple of years ago and has made after treatment, made a full recovery, still playing for Borussia Dortmund, and then goes and scores in a major tournament final for his country. But have either of you been watching bits of the tournament or caught any bits of it?
Yeah, little bits and bobs. I haven't been too into Raf, if I'm honest. I did think Nigeria. I thought Nigeria would have enough just looking at the players they had on paper. I thought they'd do it, but yeah, it's a brilliant story, Haller, because he couldn't kick snow off or open. He was at West Ham. He was really, really poor, and then he got the cancer diagnosis. So it's a brilliant story for him, and Kessie as well, getting on the score sheet for Ivory Coast. But I think Nigeria would be thinking that's one that got away. I think they felt they had it, but there was just a little lull in the game here and there, and Ivory Coast managed to just get the game by the scruff of the neck. And yeah, we had a great tournament, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and Graham, I suppose the other side from an Irish point of view, obviously there was the Chris Hughton side when he was in charge of Ghana, but Pico Lopes' story to be part of a squad that goes on to quarterfinals with Cape Verde, and then he's kind of bringing all those experiences back to Shamrock Rovers, where he's won plenty over the last few years. I guess it's just when he looks back at his career in a few years time, like he'll be, there's a lot of stories he can sort of reflect on.
Oh yeah, I done a talk with him a few years ago about it, and what it meant to him, and how integrated he was into the squad, and how much he felt and how proud he was to represent Cape Verde on behalf of his father, and how he got the name Pico and stuff, and how he goes over and he sings, learned the national anthem, and obviously understands the language a little bit better as well. But yeah, he's been brilliant. Like, and in terms of like our young players in our academy looking up to him, and obviously being from African descent, we've a lot of players coming through the academy that would be similar. A lot of players in the academy that would be of Nigerian descent. So they've been really involved in the African nations as well. But they have that person to look up to and see, well, I can do it as well, and I can come through, and it's a great. And we use that word representation, and that's where he is. He's representing Shamrock Rovers on the international level, but he's also representing a lot of young African kids who are trying to play football in this country and come through. And he's a brilliant role model. If you're not hearing anybody say a bad word about Pico Lopes in the league in terms of a wonderful player but on and off the pitch. He's exemplary, such a nice guy, very warm, very generous with his time. And it's a brilliant story for him, and hopefully it's something that a lot of young players can take heart from and kick on as well.
All right, and I think that brings us to a close now as well. So, as I said, Champions League live on Tuesday night, and that is Manchester City going to Copenhagen, so RTÉ2 and the RTÉ Player, and the same channels again on Friday night for the start of the League of Ireland season as Shamrock Rovers take on Dundalk. And Graham and Keith, thanks very much for your time. We'll chat soon.
Cheers, Raf.
Pleasure, lads.